So my name is Raymond Laraja. I am a professor of political science at the University of Massachusetts. My talk is about U.S. Politics and the money that is spent in them. The U.S. is what we call the Wild West of money in politics. It spends much more than other countries, including France. And so I lay out some of the reasons for this. One is that there are no limits in the United States, no limits on any spending whatsoever because of Supreme Court decisions. The other thing is elections are very long in the United States. They last, from the last election forward, people are already raising money in places like Hollywood and Wall Street. It's nonstop. Then there's the cost of advertising. In France, you're not allowed to buy advertising. In the United States, that's the biggest cost, and it's a big country. And then there's weak parties. This is the fourth reason. Weak parties, which means we advertise personalities every election. That costs a lot more when you don't talk about what your party principles are. So France, we see shorter campaigns, we see better news coverage, and a willingness to restrict spending, which we don't see in the United States. Now, let me say three things that I've observed about the nature of who gives money. Most people talk about corporations, but the new phenomenon in the United States is the vast increase in individual donations. So, three types. One is the mega wealthy donors to the United States campaigns. They don't even give to candidates. They give to what we call super PACs, which are these independent organizations with no restraints. They get millions and millions of dollars from these donors, and then they're spent to influence elections. And then there's a second class of donors, and these are, you could say they're merely wealthy. They give thousands and thousands of dollars to many different campaigns. These are the traditional donors in both parties. A new phenomenon, which has the potential for a lot of good, is small donors. And because of social media, it's much easier now to raise money from these small donors. Now, this could offset the power of big money, but I should point out that all of these donors share some similarities that are a cause of concern. They all tend to be more wealthy, although some are more wealthy than the others. They tend to be much older than the rest of the population. And they also tend to be unrepresentative in other ways. One way, they are much more ideologically extreme, especially on the conservative side, than rank-and-file party voters. So this could push the parties to the extremes. So some trends I see for the next election: you're going to see donors really going after these small donors, especially on the Democratic side. But I should point out that Donald Trump is the king of raising small money. Small donors are impassioned, and people who are populist, be they Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump, are attracted to them. He raised $240 million from small donors in the last election, and he's going to break that record in this election, surpassing all of the other Democrats in raising money this way. I also will see super PACs engaged in this election. These are the millionaire-funded groups that are going to try to influence the election of the candidates, and that is not going to stop. Now, where I differ with Caroline a bit is I really see that most money should flow through the parties, and she would rather have more constraints on the parties than I do. She also sees that these outside groups, especially on the left, that's where she's coming from, are good. And I am more skeptical because I want to see party leaders have more control of the process so the ideologues and the populists don't take over. And that, for me, includes the Republican Party. So we need rules that give more power to the party leaders relative to these outside groups, many of which are funded by billionaires. So those are two areas where we differ. I'm a little bit more skeptical of some of her reform proposals that she thinks will happen if the Democrats take over power, changing a lot of things. One thing we agree on, which is important, a new reform called ranked choice voting, where you get to list your favorite candidates, and you don't just, the one who wins isn't the one who gets the biggest faction, but it's someone who actually gets a majority of voters after you go through a process of a runoff on this ballot. So we're both very much in favor. We think that's a very promising reform. I'm more skeptical about other reforms, such as trying to change the Electoral College or change the people who are sitting on the Supreme Court or adding people to the Supreme Court. I don't think some of those institutional changes are likely to happen, and if they do, I'm worried about the consequences.